And we're live for the UFC 259 post show. I'm John Pollock, joined as always by the Corey Hart of post wrestling, the Lord of the Cord, Phil, wearing his sunglasses at night, Chertok.
Well, it's been a long day, John. I got up pretty early. I didn't get a nap in. This is all stuff that you know about. And rather than complain about the late card, which we always do, and
That's my job.
yeah, instead of people dwelling on the bags under my eyes, I decided to just hide them a little bit.
Yeah, you and I hit a new low perhaps today when it comes to the aging process, because we compared napping notes this afternoon. I did sneak in like a 30-minute nap. You did not, so you're definitely tougher than I was. I was up at 7 a.m. You were up at what? 6?
5:30. 5:30 today. But that's I'm early to bed, early to rise. So it's not like I'm like struggling here. I mean, you've got a newborn that you have to deal with. It's just I normally get a nap in. I couldn't today because I had a lot going on. But I'm not complaining.
It's the mental side of it. Like I go to bed pretty much religiously now at 1 a.m. and then I wake up at 7. And it's usually like I'm just used to it. But today I woke up and like the first thing on my mind was I'm probably going to be up till at least 3 a.m. That was my immediate thought when I got up today. And I was just exhausted from the thought of that, because I thought this card, if there's ever a card that's going to go late, it would be this one. But you know what? We're here at a normal time, I would say, here on the Eastern time zone.
And yeah, thank you, Amanda Nunes.
Amanda Nunes was definitely caring about getting our post show on at a reasonable hour. I feel we're going to get a barrage of people from the UK who are going to remind us of how inconvenient these cards are for them 5 hours ahead of us. But
that's
here we are, UFC 259. This was a pretty loaded show on paper, Phil, and I would go outside of just the fact that we had 3 championship fights. There's a lot of depth to this card, and if you thought there were too many fights on this card, first of all, is 15, are you cool with whatever number is thrown out there? Do you feel like there is a cap that UFC should try and keep their pay-per-view cards to? Or were you just fine with the lineup as it was tonight?
Well, from you're talking about the total 15 fight card.
Just the total, not so much the quality of the fights, just the sheer volume and time involved for someone that wants to watch a whole card, and that's a significant chunk.
Well, I guess that it depends on your obsession. I mean, from the perspective of somebody who's trying to cover the event and pay as much attention as possible, I would prefer less fights because it's just so much to absorb. But as a fan, it's exciting. It's exciting to turn on the TV at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and have fights going on. So. And you don't have to pay attention to them if you don't want. You go out, you come back, you eat. It's sort of like a Sunday. Football's on all day. So I don't think that there really needs to be a cap on the amount of fights, because it's for the fans to choose. But as somebody who's trying to cover it, it's difficult. And I imagine the completionists like our very own Eric, it's a bit challenging.
Eric was the MVP tonight, because usually on these pay-per-view nights, they are the most stressful for me. Not so much talking to you, Phil. That comes with its own stresses, but they're manageable. But when I'm doing like the notes that I'm taking for our show, while I'm also manning the website, like, dude, I'm just like nonstop moving and typing for the entire duration. There's no break in between the fights. I'm like typing up. It's just the worst. So tonight, Eric took over the report. It was such a more relaxed way to watch a pay-per-view. I got very spoiled tonight by this, though. Off the top, a major thank you to Eric Marcotte.
Well, he didn't skip a beat in the Discord. He's always stable in there. Yeah, that's right. And he's continuing the Iron Man. He's the Cal Ripken of the post world with his watching of every single UFC fight, including Dana White Contender Series. So it's very impressive.
Well, let's chat about the card tonight. As I mentioned, 15 fights, and we're going to start off with the main event. Jan Blachowicz retaining the UFC light heavyweight championship, defeating Israel Adesanya, who was coming up as the middleweight champion. And I guess what were your impressions, Phil, on Friday, seeing both men weigh in? We had Jan Blachowicz coming in at 220 and Adesanya at just over 200 pounds, 200.5 pounds, well below the weight limit at light heavyweight. And I think a lot of that, he kind of alluded to it in his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan, was not being worried about the size so much as not compromising his speed, his technique, which he felt was going to be necessary in this fight, and not giving that away for size. But there was certainly a size discrepancy in this fight.
Yeah, I didn't really have a problem with it because it was such a short notice turnaround. I actually agree with the philosophy that you should be fighting as comfortable as you normally fight, right? You want to try to fight at your best. So if you put on a bunch of weight, you're not used to fighting like that. Now, if you're going to take a serious run at another weight class and move up for the long term, then it makes a lot of sense to take the time, put on the weight properly, and prepare yourself for those bigger fighters, like we're seeing Jon Jones do right now. I've already mentioned Jon Jones. Can you believe it?
Yes, put that down. Well, I was going to bring him up myself. Like, you're looking at, for years, that was always like George St. Pierre's internal discussion was, if he were to ever move up a weight class, like, it would take significant work to go up there. And you're talking about a George St. Pierre moving up 15 pounds. The jump from middleweight to light heavyweight, it's insane that you're talking about 20 pounds and fighting guys that are going to be walking into the cage 220 minimum, probably, that you're looking at. And that's going to be a big question mark about Jon Jones whenever we see his heavyweight debut, is so much of what made him dynamic at 205 pounds. How much of that are you compromising going up to heavyweight against guys that could very well be 265 pounds that are going to have that power? And what Jon Jones, can he still just go around these guys in circles, or is he going to be a more limited version of himself? It's always those questions when you're seeing the smaller guy move up in weight versus going down in weight.
Yeah, but it appears like Jones, he's going for a run, it seems, or at least, I mean, he's putting in the work, right? It's not a quick trip up, right? To whatever, to make a statement. And look, Izzy was competitive in this fight, right? I mean, you haven't gone through the fight yet, so we're already alluding to the weight making a difference in the fight, but it was close until the weight sort of made a difference,
Yeah, I think this one was a competitive fight up until the final two rounds. I mean, early on we saw Izzy using a lot of feints, and just really the first two rounds, it was a lot of sizing up one another. But you saw Błachowicz, as he was starting to see Adesanya's game, especially in the second round, starting to attack. And I thought Błachowicz had, largely, I won't say figured out Adesanya, but I think he certainly found his rhythm by the second round. The third round, I'm kind of interested to see how you scored this fight. I mean, I gave it to Adesanya. It was mainly this left hand that he kind of stunned Błachowicz with. But I didn't think this was as like slam dunk of a round, but it was a round I ended up giving to Adesanya.
Yeah, so the third round, well, okay, I guess I can go through the rounds up to that point. So the first round, super close. I actually gave that round to Yan. I just found that Izzy was doing lots of feints, and the commentators are happy to mention how much biting on the feints Yan was doing, but Israel didn't throw as much. In the second, he actually picked up the volume, and so I gave him that round. That round was super close as well. So, like, these are razor thin rounds.
Yeah,
and then in the
I thought two was very, very close. Yeah.
And then the third round, which is the round you're talking about, is I thought I gave this one to Adesanya, and it just felt like he was flowing at this point. Like, it wasn't just volume. He was actually connecting. It wasn't clean all the time, and Yan was answering here or there, but you got the feeling that he was taking over in the striking department.
Okay, so after three rounds, you had it 2-1 for Błachowicz. I had it 2-1 for...
I had it 2-1 for Adesanya. I gave him the second and the third. I gave Błachowicz the first.
Oh, you gave him the second and the third. Okay, so Anyway, we had the same score then. We both had it 2-1 for Adesanya, just different rounds. I gave Adesanya 1 and 3. You gave him 2 and 3.
Correct, yeah.
Fourth round is when Błachowicz introduces his wrestling. And this is kind of where early on he hit him with this right hand and then immediately followed with a jab. And as Adesanya goes to throw, he's taken down. And Błachowicz is active. He gets to half guard, then he would move to side control. And it was enough to really, I would say, sway the momentum of the fight. And in total, Błachowicz would go 3 for 5 on his takedowns, but these were key ones. In the fifth, Yan was definitely tired. You could see that the effort of taking down Adesanya and riding him on top took a bit out of him. But right as it got to the midpoint of the fifth round, he shoots for that takedown and gets it, moves to half guard, and is completely controlling Adesanya. He ended up mounting him near the end, ending very strong with strikes. So very hard to argue 4 and 5 as clear-cut rounds for Jan Blachowicz. So after the fight, I had it 3 rounds to 2 for Blachowicz. I gave him 2, 4, and 5, with 1 and 3 going to Adesanya. I imagine you had it the same?
Yeah.
3 rounds to 2 in the sense of what your overall score was.
Yeah, what you described happening in the fourth and fifth, exactly. Again, similar to the rest of the fight, it was close with, I think, Izzy having the technical edge, but Jan still landing power shots. And then the takedowns just solidified it. And really, it was, the takedown into half guard. Jan would just secure underhook on the far side. And then Izzy would really just sort of, he just explode into new positions. And Jan would just sort of like full Nelson him or half Nelson him back down and turn him around. He just completely had his number, at least from a control standpoint, on the ground.
Okay, so we got the judges' scorecards. So these are interesting. First of all, the official scores were 49-46 and then 2 49-45s for Jan Blachowicz, meaning that the 49-45s, that included a 10-8 round. I didn't go 10-8. I'm pretty liberal with my 10-8s, but I did not give the fifth. And in fact, that is the round that 2 of the judges gave it 10-8. I'm not going to argue it. Like, it was a fairly strong round for Blachowicz. I would argue it was the strongest round of the 5 that either had.
Yeah, and he definitely finished with an exclamation point, right. He put a stamp on that. So, I'm not as liberal as you with the 10-8s, and I didn't give it 1 here, but it's not the worst score.
So the first judge, Derek Cleary, gave rounds 1, 2, 4, and 5 to Blachowicz with the 10-8 round in the 5th. So he only gave Adesanya the 3rd. Sal D'Amato gave 1, 2, 4, and 5 to Blachowicz. They were all 10-9s. And
Sal D'Amato, the savior of the evening. My goodness.
And yeah, he would have had your scorecard.
Sal?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I had it 3-2. 3-2. But Sal was the savior in another fight that had also had some bad judging. So that's why I made the comment. And he's not normally one that we recognize as being one of the great judges of the game.
And then the last judge here had 1, 3, 4, and 5 for Blachowicz. So a little discrepancy in those middle rounds with rounds 2 and 3. But everyone was all 3 judges were in agreement about round 1 for Blachowicz, and then 4 and 5 for Blachowicz as well. So some scores differed for 2 and 3. That's where the any arguments can exist. But I think there was nobody really arguing that Adesanya lost this fight. He stated afterwards he's going to go back to middleweight, but he said he plans to return to light heavyweight. This is not a one and done, that he wants to continue to explore this weight class in the future. And I guess that will ultimately depend on what contenders emerge at 185 pounds for him and how interesting it is there for him. I think that there are some fights at 185, but I guess you're looking at 205. What is learned from this fight? This guy certainly was not outclassed. It's not like he didn't look like he did not belong in this weight class. It wasn't one of those cases, but it is one where you go back to the drawing board and maybe reassess what did not work here. And for your immediate future, do you stay consistent with 185 and then make the decision like we just talked about with a Jon Jones, making the concerted effort that when you move up to light heavyweight next is a permanent one?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, he was very competitive here, and I mean, he was competitive against the champion. And minus those, and it wasn't even just the takedowns, because he defended takedowns well in this fight. It was just that inability to get up. So that's really what he has to figure out, and has to decide how long it's going to take to solve that problem if he wants to go up to 205 on the regular, because there's going to be other guys who are going to be just as heavy, who are good wrestlers, who are going to try to grind on him. I mean, he still did well, even with Big Boy Yan on top of him. It's just that those last 2 rounds, he didn't have enough. I do think he didn't have enough technique. It seemed like he was a little lost down there. So I don't want to say it was the size, because he wasn't even that tired. He had a lot of energy. Like, it made a difference, but I still feel he could have done better with what he had.
So looking at the light heavyweight picture, it would seem to point to Glover Teixeira as the next likely contender. I don't think that the winner of Alexander Rakić and Thiago Santos produced the next contender after their performance tonight.
No, it's a little far off. Yeah.
We'll get to that. Well, we're going to blitz through this next title fight because there's a whole lot to talk about. Amanda Nunes was a Mack truck, and she steamrolled Megan Anderson in 2 minutes and 3 seconds of their women's featherweight title fight. And this was, I don't know if a fight has ever started so quickly where you knew it was over almost instantaneously. I mean, she lands this right hand, and it was with such force that you knew that's it. It's over. And Nunes at least made 2 minutes and 3 seconds out of this. She followed and wobbled Anderson. It was not looking good. And then she just tees off with left jabs. Like, Nunes could have had a blindfold on. She was not missing her target. Everything was connecting. Anderson goes down, ground and pound. She's going for a triangle, then a triangle armbar as Anderson taps out. And Amanda Nunes dominates this fight, her 12th consecutive victory. And my favorite exchange afterwards was Joe Rogan asking, what are the rankings at 145? And John Anik responded, there are none. And Cormier says, there are no rankings at 145. Dude, this is, you can call the maid, because this division has been cleaned out. I don't know what the future of this featherweight division is. I mean, people are throwing out the names of, a Juliana Pena coming up to 145 pounds. I don't know if Juliana Pena would rather campaign for a bantamweight fight as opposed to that. Largely, what you have is any female at 135 pounds that wanted to raise their arm to move up to 145 pounds probably has a decent shot of getting a title fight. That's where this division is, because it's empty.
Yeah, or even women outside of the UFC. I know that it's not that deep of a pool out there. Kayla Harrison unfortunately is unavailable. I mean, that's the name, right? That's the one you want to do now. But
who's not even fighting at 145. I mean,
that's right. They would need to figure that out, right? Like, and she said she's committed to trying to make that. But I don't know if she's ever made that weight. So, it's a kind of crappy situation. But we've seen this before. I mean, Cyborg was kind of in this spot for a really long time. Now, she wasn't in the UFC, but there was even a period when the UFC didn't have female fighters, and she was pretty much mowing through anybody that they put in front of her. So I could see, her continuing on with just a bunch of, jobbers, as they like to, as they say in the other half of your industry.
Yeah, not much more to say about this fight other than with Amanda Nunes. Not the pressure to take a title off of her. I think that you can still market her as just double champion. It's just the featherweight fights, I think, are going to be few and far between unless you make a real concerted effort to build up this division by just finding featherweights that are out there, because it's completely barren at this point. But that said, quick title fight.
I don't think you have to drop a title at all. I think the shine is she's the double champ and she's cleaned out the division. So she just walks around all the time with 2 belts, no contenders, and that's the gimmick. It's just like the expectation is she's just going to smash through all these people until one day somebody surprises us. Maybe not.
The most controversial fight of the night was Pyotr Yan versus Aljamain Sterling for the UFC bantamweight title. I thought up until the end, this was a great fight. I thought that this was Aljamain Sterling came out of the gates and he was looking fantastic, but it was a pace that he was setting that you didn't figure he could keep up. But my God, was he busy with his kicks, his jabs. He was throwing this flying knee that connected with Yan and then got a takedown off of the cage. And you're thinking, oh my God, the takedown, he was able to get it so easily. This was his only takedown because on his next 13 attempts, he would be thwarted. And then in the middle of this round, Yan just drops him with his right hand and Yan takes over at this point. He sweeps the leg, he's kicking at the body, lifts and just dumps Sterling down onto the mat. It was enough for me to think that Yan pulled this round out. Did you think that he did enough to take this round, or did you think that Sterling won the first?
I gave the first round to Sterling, but I was very torn on it. Again, it just felt like Sterling was busier, but by the end of the round, it had sort of turned in Yan's favor, and is like, so I still gave it to Sterling just because of the activity. But yeah, he was doing what Yan does. He finds ways to win rounds, and he does it at the end of rounds. And he going into this fight, I'm sitting thinking, this is one of the smartest fighters in the game. This is one of the highest IQ fighters in the game. Yan, Petr Yan. That
it was a completely fair assignment to Pyotr Yan in rounds 1, 2, and 3. And would be compromised in the 4th. We will get there. Second round, a lot of clinching from Sterling. Sterling landed another knee and was throwing strikes. I thought a very close round. This was a round I did give to Sterling, so I had it even up.
You know what? I misread my notes. I gave the first round to Yan because of the drop. And then the Sterling, I gave the second round. So yeah, it was. They were all close. They were close.
Everybody out there, put on a seatbelt and hold on tight. Phil and I agreed on scoring these rounds.
Okay,
this is a shock.
Yes,
we had identical scorecards. Wow.
Well, we'll see what happens in the 3rd and 4th. I mean, what do you think happened in the 4th?
Well, I don't think these were as contentious because at this point, Sterling was definitely feeling the effects of these first 2 rounds. It was Yan controlling the pace. This guy is just an outstanding defensive fighter. Had these leg sweeps that was sending Sterling down to the mat and just landing these clean shots. Sterling would repeatedly go to his back, so Sterling got his legs attacked. The 3rd round to me was the easiest round to score so far for Yan. Into the 4th, Sterling is just walking in and eating these shots, and it looks like Yan is just pulling away. The only question is he going to stop this guy, or are they actually going to go 25 minutes? This is where they bring up the stat that Sterling is 1 for 14 on his takedowns. Sterling is tired and doing all these like spinning back fists and stuff that have no pop behind them, so he's getting caught each time. It's really falling apart for Aljamain Sterling. So with Aljamain Sterling down on one knee, Pyotr Yan gives what I can best describe to our wrestling audience that is listening would be a no-grip Kamagoye to the head. And this thing was brutal. Sterling's head popped back like he was a Pez dispenser. It was a nasty, nasty knee. And Mark Smith is immediately concerned here for Sterling. And the fight is waved off, and it was like debated here for some time. It's not like it was this automatic, the fight is over. Like they were really looking here at Sterling to see, I understand this is a pressure situation. The guy's in a championship fight and you don't want to make a rash decision, but a rash decision would have been continuing this fight. He had no business continuing to fight. He was totally messed up.
Yeah, it was it was different than the Anthony Smith situation that it was compared to, right? Because maybe you want to summarize what transpired here, and then we can talk about that and how it compares and doesn't compare.
So, I mean, it's a clear illegal knee, and Mark Smith had warned him that he was down, and Yan still delivered the knee. So, based on that, like, because it was so late in the fight, your options are you go to the scorecards, and had they done, like, if he had not ruled it intentional, he could have gone to the scorecards. And in that scenario, which we learned, Yan would have retained the title because he was ahead on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards. However, because he deemed it intentional, it was a disqualification. And on a disqualification, that means that the title changes hands. And Aljamain Sterling is the new bantamweight champion. It was called at 429 of the 4th round. You have never seen a man more upset that he won a championship than Aljamain Sterling. He was furious. For all we know, has not officially been stated, but I would have to imagine there's a very high probability he has a concussion. And then he was interviewed after, which seemed completely unnecessary and just an unfortunate end, but also one where it was the only decision you could make. Now, Khabib Nurmagomedov had been out, and this came out on the broadcast that he had heard Jan's corner stating to hit him when he was down on one knee. Yan later spoke to ESPN and said he did not hear his corner give him that instruction. So he delivered the knee. I mean, Yan screwed up. That's what it comes down to. And it cost him his championship, which I can only think the only option is to run this fight back. I can't see any other bantamweight fighting for this title before Petr Yan does. So that's the outcome I see of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Aljamain was out. It should have been stopped. It was stopped. It should have been stopped. It probably should have been stopped earlier. They were letting it go quite a while, but it was the right call. In regards to the title changing hands, it's like the title is actually just awarded to the winner of the fight. So, and it's actually a new title, and it's just a promotional thing anyway. So the rules of who gets it under what circumstances are just sort of laid out in the fight contract. So the winner of the fight gets the title. That's Aljamain. And it's deserved in that regard. Now, why I want to compare this to the Anthony Smith situation is because everybody was like saying, oh, Anthony Smith, you made the wrong decision. You should have just, I can't continue and take the title, and, you'll get more money in the rematch and all that. You're thinking about your family. All that's true. Sure, you're thinking about your family. But if you can continue, you should continue. And Aljamain couldn't continue. And so he shouldn't, and the fight should have been stopped, right? Like, it shouldn't be based on, does the fighter think he should continue? It's like, can you continue or not? It shouldn't be like, oh, I got hit with an illegal shot, I'm going to stop it. The doctor is there to determine if you can or can't. So it was different in that regard, but the right call happened here. And they got to run it back. It's the only thing that makes sense. I mean, Yan was doing amazing in this fight. He was really putting it on him.
Yeah, as we said, the judges' scorecards after 3 rounds, 2 of them had it 29-28 for Yan, and 1 had it 29-28 for Sterling. So had they gone to the scorecards, Yan would have retained the title. But you run this fight back. I liken this to when Vitor Belfort won the light heavyweight title. And for those that don't remember this fight, it was from UFC 46 back in 2004. And Vitor Belfort had thrown a punch, and then part of his glove sliced the eyelid of Randy Couture, and it had exposed his eyeball. And they brought the doctor in, Margaret Goodman, to check, and he could not continue. And it was ruled a TKO win for Vitor Belfort. It wasn't like he had done something intentionally to cause this, but he ends up winning the title under, certainly shrouded circumstances. And then they just ran the fight back that August, and Randy won the belt back. But a very not a common occurrence when it comes to championships changing hands like this.
I mean, there's the blessing in disguise is, this was an incredibly exciting fight, and I think people will really want to see this one again. So this is I wouldn't be surprised if this is headlining a card.
You have a story to come back and a reason for the rematch. So I think for that very reason, this makes all the sense in the world. Like, you can't, to me, even a Corey Sandhagen, especially a TJ Dillashaw, like, I put all of that on ice until you redo this fight. I think that's the only logical fight to make.
This is actually works out better for the division. Minus, I mean, you've got Sandhagen, who was like, he just still, it wasn't that long ago he lost to Aljamain. And so you've got that. And he wants to fight TJ. And TJ should be coming back. And, you can't really put him right in the title shot, even though that's what Yan was looking for. So you can do Sandhagen versus Dillashaw. You've got Cruz now, who's back in the mix. So it's a really good, it actually, I think it's a horrible outcome that no one wanted, but I think it will actually benefit the division over the course of the year.
What if they just go with Jose Aldo?
Then we all win.
Islam Makhachev defeated Drew Dober. Defeat might not be a strong enough statement. This was an unbelievable performance from Makhachev, and more so because Drew Dober is a quality fighter, and he dominated this guy. I had 2 10-8 rounds, Phil, before Dober was submitted in the third round. Makhachev just got numerous takedowns, was so aggressive, moving from half guard to mount. This guy just flowed controlling this guy. He used his knee on belly into side control. Just everything he did, it just was seamless from one thing to the next. And you've heard so many stories about Makhachev from those that have trained with him and his comparisons to Khabib and just the strength that he possesses for a lightweight. And, we've seen him. This isn't like his coming out party. He's 7-1 in the UFC, but I feel this one being on a big pay-per-view, and he hadn't fought since September of 2019, that this reinserted him into that lightweight mix in a big way. And I just think this guy was one of the major stories coming out of 259.
I 100% agree on this stat card. He was actually the person I was most looking forward to seeing fight. We were supposed to see him in the main event in, I don't know if it was 2019 or 2020, where he was supposed to fight Rafael dos Anjos. That didn't happen.
Twice. Yeah. He was supposed to have 3 fights last year, and they all fell apart. He was having Alexander Hernandez one, and then twice they tried to book him with RDA, and they fell apart. So 2020 was a write-off for him.
Yeah. So and also at the same time, Khabib was still around and champion. And so that was never going, he's like, he was going to back off until the time was right. So now Khabib's gone. There's quite a few guys ahead of him at the top of the division, but I think he's ready to be right inserted at the tail end of that group. And I want to see him given a chance to jump the line a little bit.
What did you think about this submission at the end? He's going for like this arm triangle, and it's using his shoulder pressure that ends up submitting Dober at 137 of the third round. I mean, this was just a magnificent performance.
So there was a lot of things leading up to that. Just the way he would, one way you control people on the ground, whether it's side control or half guard, is with an underhook on the far side. And his ability to control that underhook on the far side, we saw that in the main event, was tremendous. And he would always pass, very smoothly with his hips very heavy. So even when he would break the guard and move to either mount or knee on belly, as you mentioned, there was no space at any point for Drew Dober. And Drew Dober was trying. Like, he wasn't a fish out of water. The skill level was so much greater. And then that submission at the end, that shoulder pressure choke, that's something that top players can get, but it's when your level is like, it's like multiple levels upon a guy. Like, when it's competitive, a shoulder pressure choke like that, no. Arm triangle, yeah, you can get that on anybody with placement, but just that squeeze, very impressive, more impressive than I even anticipated in terms of the grappling. And yeah, like I said, I want to see him in there with a decent name.
Well, the name he threw out after when he was interviewed, I love this idea, is Tony Ferguson.
I mean, that
couldn't do the fight with Khabib. It's Islam who gets the win, or at least gets the fight with Tony Ferguson. I like that fight a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the Discord, I was mentioning, so the three names I thought, so Dos Anjos was the most ideal one, but then I forgot that it was 2 cancellations. So you don't want to go there again. Ferguson makes sense for the storyline of, Khabib never got the fight, so it's sort of like Islam getting that fight. And I really like the idea of Paul Felder. He's coming off of some losses, but they were close, and he's a name, and I think that would be a really exciting fight, and beating him would be a statement too. So I would pick one of those 3. We've got Eric complaining somewhere, but I'm not, that's okay, Eric. You're right the rest of the time, not on this one.
2 notes here from the press conference afterwards with Dana White. This is from Aaron Bronstetter. Dana White stating that Glover Teixeira is the top contender at 205 pounds, and that Aljamain Sterling went to the hospital after the fight and he was cleared. So that is the update on those 2.
Those are both good.
Well, this next fight wasn't. Thiago Santos versus Aleksandar Rakić. It went 3 rounds. Rakić won by unanimous decision. I thought Rakić won the first 2 rounds and Santos won the 3rd. And afterward, I don't think Rakić put himself anywhere closer to a title fight. This was very dull.
Yeah, it was very dull. The most interesting part was after the fight, Rakić went over to Dana, was sort of like pointing at him and yelling, I guess saying how he's going to be something and whatever. Not the type of performance,
No,
that
you can't be pointing fingers when you put in a performance like this.
And I saw this a couple times. He just no sells.
Well, yeah,
Ari
Dana brought this
Emanuel
up after. Apparently, Błachowicz went up to Dana after and said, "You never believed in me."
Oh, really? But Ari Emanuel's sitting there too, and they all ignore him. They don't even know who Ari Emanuel is. It's like, that's the boss's boss. And Dominick Cruz was the one. He fist bumps Dana and it's like, oh, Ari, you're here too. Okay, sure. Guys, who signs the checks?
Yeah. I mean, there isn't a whole lot to break down from this fight. It was just, 2 guys that were extremely cautious with one another. And it was just like, really, Thiago Santos won that last round based on like a kick to the body and a bit more offensive output than Rakić. But I mean, this was a fight that just didn't do either any favors. And for Thiago Santos, this is his 3rd straight loss. Granted, that's Jon Jones, Glover Teixeira, but Rakić. It's unfortunate though that, after that incredible performance against Jon Jones, it's now going to be discussed, like how much did that double knee surgery have on Santos, who finds himself further down that light heavyweight pack. And he's 37 years old. That's a tough age to be at to turn things around and get back to a championship shot. I would say he's put himself pretty much behind that opportunity now.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, for a while, he was relying on the fact that he was a very exciting fighter, but this was the opposite of that. So, when you're no longer exciting and you're no longer able to compete at the highest level, that's not a good recipe.
Into the televised prelims, it was headlined by Dominick Cruz winning a split decision over Casey Kenney. This was a very competitive fight, some very close rounds. I could have seen the scores going many different ways. I did score all 3 rounds for Dominick Cruz. How did you score the fight?
I scored all 3 rounds for Dominick Cruz. With the 2nd round, I thought that was like a coin flip. Like,
yep.
I don't really have a good reason. Wait, what did I write? I didn't have any particular reason why I chose Cruz, just because I like him more. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, the questions coming into this fight, like we had last seen Cruz in the Henry Cejudo fight last year, was, he's about to turn 36. Would any of his speed be diminished? His footwork? I mean, he is, to me, I don't know if we'll see Dominick Cruz make a campaign for another championship at bantamweight, but he's certainly going to be up there in that mix. He certainly showed me enough here against a really good opponent in Casey Kenney. This guy had an incredible schedule last year. He fought 4 times. He fought twice in October of last year.
And he looked good here. I was really impressed with Dom in this fight, actually. I mean, I thought he fought really well. He had great movement. He had great timing. He has this ability he has a few shots where the setup is so hidden because the setup is like some move. Like he'll dip to the right or shuffle to the right, and that's his movement. And then sometimes instead of dipping and moving, he just throws his right hand and he lands it all the time. It's not a super powerful shot, but it catches you off guard. Also, he had Kenney just whiffing air at points, like it was Ronda Rousey moment type in the first. So it was little moments that just vintage Cruz. And at the same time, there was moments where he had to get in it. He had to go and trade blows 1 for 1, and he was right there in that too. On top of that, he showed great fight IQ like he always has. I thought it was a tremendous performance. And yeah, I want to see him in there with somebody at the top. And I'm okay with him making a run. You give him one guy, somebody near the top, and he beats him. Yeah, give him a title shot.
Well, he's looking for a monster fight coming up because he then proceeded to have one of the oddest post-fight interviews in UFC history where he was given, we're fighting the clock because they're about to go to the pay-per-view. And he goes on this long explanation about why he wants to fight Hans Molenkamp. And this led to however many people were watching the UFC prelims to Google Hans Molenkamp.
Did you know who Hans Molenkamp was? Did you know who this guy was?
I did not. I literally had to look this guy up.
I had no clue either.
An executive with monster energy. And Dominick Cruz is explaining how he holds people's contracts hostage. Joe Rogan hears the word hostage, and he's immediately thinking this is some political figure. And Cruz informs him, no, this isn't political. He's part of Monster Energy, which, to remind everybody, is like one of the major sponsors of the UFC whose logo is at the center of the canvas. So not since Brock Lesnar has a fighter taken to task a sponsor with their allotted post-fight interview time. This was so bizarre.
Yeah, it was so bizarre. I didn't understand it. And then when people were explaining this character, who's just like some type of tough guy posting videos with fighters, it's like I couldn't tell if it was like a work at some point. It seemed like is he trying to like work with this guy to build some promotional event? But like he sounded very mean and angry about it. I don't know. Maybe he'll explain in the post conference, but it's like, of all the people to call out, okay, sure. Hans Molenkamp was
just really out there and just a weird moment of the night. Song Yadong versus Kyler Phillips. Kyler Phillips looked very impressive in this fight. Song Yadong has like quietly had a very good run at bantamweight. He's 5-0-1 in the UFC, and he's only 23 years of age. He teams with Team Alpha Male. But Phillips here, he immediately hit this right head kick, and I was most impressed with this guy's footwork and his ability to just work up his power. And he was just so economical with his movement, his striking. Like, he was so crisp on his feet. He won the first 2 rounds. I gave the third to Song Yadong, who connected with a left hook during this exchange and just kind of increased his output. So I had a 29-28 for Kyler Phillips, and that's what all 3 judges had. But I thought a very good performance from Phillips.
Yeah, very, very good performance. Yadong's excellent, and he showed skills in this fight. There was moments where it looked like he could have had an opportunity to turn it. Phillips was, who was very crisp early on, would have moments where he would dip, and Yadong had a lot of power. But ultimately, Phillips had enough creativity and skill to take the first 2 rounds. And I gave Yadong the third as well, but it was too little, too late.
Askarov defeated Joseph Benavidez by unanimous decision.
Askarov.
That is right. The Askarov. Tough fight to watch if you're a Joseph Benavidez fan, because he lost every minute of this fight. Askarov he just felt like he was at a different level than Joseph Benavidez, who it just seemed to me, Phil, like especially late, you saw him just kind of throwing everything. But even in the early going, it just seemed like he was not the regular disciplined striker that you had come to associate with Joseph Benavidez. And Askarov was the much more patient one. And it just seemed that he was able to take Benavidez down many, many times, just slamming him down, was just controlling him on top with a body triangle. And Benavidez had no answers for Askarov. So I thought these were three very easy. To be honest, I gave the second one a 10-8 for Askarov. So I had it 30-26.
Yes, I did as well. It was complete domination. I think the thing with Benavidez is when he fights somebody who's a more technical striker than him, it's pure relying on those looping in and getting out, because he doesn't really have. He's always been sort of like a looping fighter. He's very skilled, but here it was just the technique difference was too high, and he wasn't going to out wrestle him either. It was tough to watch. He's outmatched pretty much everywhere in this fight.
Yeah. For Benavidez, it's his third loss in a row. The previous two were to Davison Figueiredo. And one unfortunate part of this, like the narrative coming out of this will be a 3-fight losing streak for Benavidez. 2 of those 3 fights are opponents that miss weight, including Askarov here. Which, when a fighter accepts a fight with someone that misses weight, they don't really get credit for that. It just goes down as a loss. I always think it's very unfortunate because that fighter made weight, and why should they have to give up their chance to get their win bonus and fight the next day? You're kind of in a corner where you're pressured to basically take the fight. But for Benavidez, I mean, we're coming off Junior Dos Santos and Alistair Overeem being cut. Joseph Benavidez, that's going to be the discussion after this. Does he get one more fight in the UFC, or is he going to be viewed upon as a guy that's 36 years old? He's not going to fight for the championship again. What is he contributing to the division if he is not going to be a championship contender? He's only someone that could knock off potential contenders.
Yeah, I think it's a tough spot for him because of that fact that he is still very good and he can knock off contenders. And there are quite a few contenders in this division. It's actually a really exciting time for it. So there are maybe a couple fights out there for him at the bottom of the top 10 or just outside of it. But I could see the UFC parting ways with him just to avoid that fact of him, possibly knocking off prospects.
It's such an interesting career to look at if you follow Joseph Benavidez from the WEC onto UFC, and you like in a different scenario, in a world where Demetrius Johnson does not come to the UFC, or like Joseph Benavidez very well could have been the dominant flyweight of the past decade if not for Demetrius Johnson. Like he was like the number 2 flyweight, and he could not beat Demetrius Johnson. Yeah,
and I mean, and the first fight was pretty competitive. It was just the fact that second fight was such a brutal finish. He was never going to get a chance to get back there. And, look, he got chances at the belt, and, he got 2 chances. He got, what, 3?
He got multiple.
4 chances.
He got the Figueiredo fights this year.
Yeah.
He had the 2 with Demetrius Johnson. It's like, you can't say that he did not have his opportunities.
Yeah. It's sort of like the Stephen Wonderboy Thompson thing. It's like, you've spent 50 minutes trying to be champion and you couldn't do it. It's like, you kind of deserve to be up there, but it's like you had your chance and didn't do it. So tough for Joseph B, but he's gone out brutally in some of his losses. So this one, it wasn't so bad, but tough to see what the future holds for him in the UFC.
And the televised prelims opened up with this wild fight. Rogério Bontorin versus Kai Kara-France. And this fight was insane. Bontorin was like, it looked like this fight was over. He gets him to the ground and applies this deep body triangle, and Kara-France is defending and is able to break it. Bontorin brings him right back down to the mat, applies this deep rear naked choke. Kara-France still fights it. He's doing all this hand fighting to escape. And then they get back to their feet. They've literally just brought in the ESPN feed because a game had run late. And as soon as Jon Anik welcomes the ESPN crowd, boom, Kara France lands this right hand, an uppercut, another right hand as Bontorin goes down, and Herb Dean like comes in to grab Kara France, and you're not quite sure if he's called the fight, but he has, and Kara France is dominated for about 4 minutes and 40 seconds, and then turns it around in 15 seconds and wins this fight at 4:55 of the first round. This was unreal.
Yeah, this was kind of the sort of like the apex of the night in terms of the wildness, because up to this point there had been, as we're going to get to, it was just sort of crazy bunch of prelims, and then this one, it just sort of took the cake because it went backwards and forwards, and yeah, the way Kara France pulled it off at the end, I don't think anyone saw that coming. And, another exciting flyweight.
And the lone victory for the City Kickboxing crew, because you had Carlos Ulberg on the undercard and then Adesanya in the main event.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
This was the lone victory.
Yes.
And let's just quickly read the results here from the undercard. This was the early prelims. I saw 4 of the 6, and you had some really exciting fights here. Tim Elliott defeated Jordan Espinosa by unanimous decision. Kennedy and Zechiku defeated Carlos Ulberg by knockout at 3:19 of round 2. And Zechiku, Phil.
And Zechiku. Well, this was a tremendous fight. This is one I think people might want to go back and watch. Probably is going to be fight of the night because, of the ending to Yan versus Sterling. But crazy back and forth. Good stuff in this one.
Sean Brady submitted Jake Matthews at 3:28 of the third round with an arm triangle. Amanda Lemos defeated Lavinia Souza by TKO at 3:39 of the first round. She looked great in this fight. I mean, my God, just lit her up with kicks and then dropped her with this right hand, was going for the guillotine, and then they go back to their feet, and Lemos drops her with a jab and ended this fight with a jab.
Yeah, this was batting practice here. This was so different levels of fighter here. It was kind of like worse than a sparring session. Kind of tough to watch. Thankfully, nobody got hurt too bad.
Yeah, and I mean, Souza's a former strawweight champion with Invicta, so not a pushover here. But Lemos looked, this was a totally one-sided fight, as was Uros Medic over Elon Cruz. This ended at 1:40 of the first round. It probably could have ended at 40 seconds of the first round. Medic landed this right hand, a flying knee, and then he spent like a minute of ground and pound as referee Mark Smith gave Elon Cruz every single opportunity and then found more opportunity to give him to recover. I mean, it's a tough spot. You don't want to be the referee that stops it too early, and if a fighter is moving, you tend to give them the benefit of the doubt, but this one went really long.
Yeah, you have to. Yes, they're moving, but you have to see like what's the trajectory of this thing, and it wasn't getting any better. And it like he moved once, he moved twice, he moves 3-4 times, and he's still not escaping. That's not enough, especially when you're still getting hammered.
Yes, and if you want to relive the commentary, this is in these kinds of situations, Rogan and Cormier just take over, and it's stop the fight. Come on, you can stop the fight. Stop the fight.
No, that's an interesting discussion point, because I think, you could kind of tell that they're sort of saying it under their breath a little bit because they can hear them. And they don't want to be saying stop the fight. They don't want to do the Dan Hardy Herb Dean thing, right? Like they don't want to actually be getting involved. So it's a tough situation. They're right. I mean, I thought they were right in that situation. It should have been stopped, but they can't be yelling at the ref to stop the fight, and they didn't. So but it is weird, like with no audience in there and it's all quiet.
They're reacting. I mean, I'm not going to hold it against announcers for reacting in the moment to what they're seeing.
I thought they handled it as best they could, right? They didn't go and pressure it. They didn't say, hey, stop it. Like, I could understand how they would be tempted to do that in situations.
And in the opener, Trevin Jones defeated Mario Bautista, who was sporting this incredible mullet. He looked very much like a younger Miguel Torres.
Oh, wow.
And Trevin Jones won by TKO 47 seconds of the second round after Jones went for like this right uppercut, but then transitioned to a hook. And dude, Batista just crumbled and was finished with hammer fists. So Trevin Jones, a nice win here to open up the card. The first of 15 fights.
Normally I wouldn't recommend going back and looking at the prelims too much, but this was really
there were some
good.
Good fights.
Yeah, even we didn't mention too much, but Sean Brady versus Jake Matthews. Sean Brady really emerged as a legit prospect here. It would be worth it just to see him control this fight.
Performance of the night bonuses went to Kai Kara France and Uros Medic, and fight of the night to Kennedy and Zechiku versus Carlos Ulberg.
All right. Just as I predicted.
$50,000 bonuses. And that was UFC 259.
Awesome.
A pretty good card.
Yeah, it was a good card. Unfortunately, it was marred by the Yan versus Sterling situation, but tremendous card. Great performances all around. Do we have time for a call, John?
Yes, let's do it. 2:30 in the morning. Let's open the phone lines.
All right. John Fury 316. What's the bottom line on UFC 259? John?
I'm here.
Well, that John's here. John, I can't hear you. You're not muted on my end. So I'll give you a second to see if you can figure it out, but can't see to. All right, John, maybe you can figure it out and we'll get somebody else on the line here. We have got Mike from Blockbuster. Mike?
Ahoy, ahoy. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thankfully, it's only 10:31 p.m. here, so I can actually spend a couple hours trying to unwind and decompress. So I'll make it short and sweet so y'all can get off the line and go to bed. These gladiator sports, man, they're tough to watch sometimes. Just the sheer brutality that there's some things that happen in these sports with the Medic fight and even the knee with Sterling. It's just, they kind of grab you and shake you, and it really makes watching the sport difficult. And I just want to shout out all the people that cover this sport, that watch this sport, that are fans of the sport, and especially the people that sacrifice their bodies for this sport, because that shit was brutal today. And Dana White, R.A. Emanuel, fucking pay these people. Give them more money, give them more insurance, send them to the plastic surgeon more, send them to the neuro specialist more.
Well, there you go. A PSA at this hour of the night.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mike, from
Mike,
Blockbuster.
Yeah, he sent that via VHS. All right, I'm going to try you again, John Fury 316.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you this time.
Thank
you.
I thought it was a good card. I agree with you. It was good, except for the Sterling Yan fight. I'm assuming they're going to run it back. I think Sterling has a chance if he slows down that pace. I think he went way too fast in the first round, and I think that's what he was eventually going to lose. So I guess there's that. I want to talk about the main event here for a second.
Okay.
It's kind of disappointed. I really wanted Izzy to win because, like, Izzy is playing this game with him and John are playing this game, and I kind of want to see it finished. I was hoping that, because the talk was that if he won this, he was become the first triple champion because he'd go up to heavyweight and challenge Jon Jones, who would eventually win the title. And like now I'm hoping that Jon wins the heavyweight title, moves down, retakes the light heavyweight, and then trolls Izzy saying, I just beat the guy you can't beat, come up and get the title. And then we eventually have that fight. What do you think? Like,
it's just too many moving parts. Like, it's just like, I'm not saying that fight can't happen, but it's a lot of things down the line for it to happen.
I 100% agree, but you could see the game that they're playing. Like, Jon moves up and then Izzy just says, I'm going to take the title. Like, they're playing this back and forth game to try to set up this massive fight. And I think Izzy's goal was, I want to win 2 titles, let Jon win a title, and we can have this 3 title whatever, like a 3 championships in one fight would be would be awesome. But with Izzy losing, I wonder if there is now a game plan to beat him, because you saw with the Yan, as soon as Yan would punch and Izzy would do that fade away where he would try to back up, he would take him down. Unless Izzy works on that, that could be the thing that gets people realizing how to beat him. What do you think?
John?
I think that there's definitely things that can be learned from this fight regarding Adesanya. Like as Phil mentioned, it was not so much just the size that Błachowicz was able to impose on top of him, but it was also just Adesanya's inability to get out from his half guard, to be able to, be active off of his back. You really saw Adesanya almost kind of just forfeit the position at that point. Like there was not a whole lot of way out of there. And that's going to be tricky. Like that has kind of been focused upon is like, for high level wrestlers, and Błachowicz would not be a high level wrestler, how they are going to deal problems for Adesanya. So I think that you can certainly put into focus. And just going back to your original point, I just think for Jones to make this move up to heavyweight now, I'm not a big fan of making that move all the way up and then coming back down to 205. I just think I really believe that his move up to heavyweight is going to be a permanent one. He's always stated like that is once I go up to heavyweight, that's it. I'm staying there. And it's not the same as just moving up by 10 pounds. Like to be competitive at heavyweight, like you have to put on a significant amount of size that to me, it's a whole lifestyle change for him that I can't imagine he's going to, unless this guy comes out and heavyweight is a complete disaster for him. I just think that this is where we're likely to see Jones finish his career at, but we will see.
All right. Thank you very much for the call, John. And we have one more call. Of course, it wouldn't be a post show if we didn't take a trip down to New Jersey to visit one Brandon from New Jersey. Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
We're good. We're glad to hear
doing
you.
Wonderful, Brandon. What'd you think about the card tonight?
I thought it was great. A couple things I'll get out of here. I thought that Islam Makhachev looked tremendous. I don't know if you guys consider. I thought it was a pretty star-making performance on his end. And
one day when you listen to all of our show, you'll realize that sadly you and I do agree on many points.
You know what? You take that attitude and you go let Eric know. You let Eric know, okay?
Absolutely. Did you hear the Tim Elliott Espinoza audio when Elliott took him down and he was accusing Espinoza of crazy stuff? It was kind of weird. Like I don't want to say what he called.
I did not see the fight, so I don't really know what happened.
So I'll just summarize it, but I won't. In the third round, Elliott really started to establish himself with his takedown, and at one point he had him in half guard on top, and he had his forearm driving into the jaw and throat, and he was making accusations against him about his personal life and things that he did in his personal life. And so I'm not going to repeat them. People, if they want to find out what they are, they can go ahead. But as Cormier said on the broadcast, it was some dark stuff was happening on that cage floor. So I'll leave it at that.
It was pretty weird. And one more thing, who stared at each other more in a combat sports setting? Rakić and Santos, or Ghost Sasaki and Fujita?
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Way to alienate Phil on this call.
Thank you.
But that's a match we can send Phil to maybe review over the next month.
Everybody kept saying that knee. Everybody kept mentioning the knee from earlier was this pro wrestling knee. So now I got to go look up this pro wrestling knee. So,
okay, well, you can make the comparison points and see if they were similar or not. Before we get out of here, next few cards coming up, we've got Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad next Saturday. The weekend after that, it's Derek Brunson, Kevin Holland headlining the Fight Night card. And the next time Phil and I will be here, UFC 260. 2 title fights, Phil. We've got Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou in a rematch from 2018 for the heavyweight title, and Alexander Volkanovski versus your man, Brian Ortega, for the featherweight title.
That's 2 great fights. I mean, the heavyweight rematch, I think everybody's going to be really excited, especially because of the way that we all know that Ngannou can end fights. And then, Brian Ortega stepping up for another title shot after just an amazing performance in his last fight. But, but he's going up against, Volkanovski, who's also looked really amazing. And this is a really interesting fight because I think a lot of people want to see that Max versus Volkanovski third fight now after what Max just did. And Ortega, he can play spoiler to that. I think it's going to be a really, really good event.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that featherweight fight. The main card also has Tyron Woodley. Very important fight for him against Vicente Luque, which is a tough fight for Tyron Woodley. And Sean O'Malley is back, taking on Thomas Almeida. Those are the 4 fights that are listed right now for the main card.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good fight for O'Malley too, because it's a name, but somebody who's been struggling himself.
So that is Saturday, March the 27th. That is the next time we will be back. We are live after every UFC pay-per-view here at youtube.com/postwrestling. But everyone knows that every single UFC card, and really 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it all goes down in the Discord. And the man behind the Discord, one of them at least, Phil Chertok, who is the evil genius behind the Discord.
Hey, have you ever vacationed in Post Santos?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I felt I was just going to be walking into something if I said yes, so I declined. I have not. Check out the Discord, everybody. Free to join. Go to postwrestling.com, enter the Discord. On Sunday night, Wei and I will be back because there's another pay-per-view. I don't know if Phil will be watching this, but we will be live for tomorrow night. AEW Revolution is happening.
Oh, I heard about this. This is the barbed wire thing, right?
That's right. Exploding barbed wire death match. And it will feature Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley in the main event. Wei and I will be live for our double ice cap and espresso members of the Post Wrestling Cafe immediately after the pay-per-view. And then the podcast version will be up later that night. So we'll speak to you on Sunday night. Phil, as always, it's been a pleasure.
It has been.
Anything you've got to plug? Anything you want to alert the listenership to?
Just, hey, if just come hang out in the Discord. We've got so many new channels, great topics, not just wrestling, not just MMA. We talk about sports, gaming, movies, music, philosophy, politics. We share pictures of our food, pictures of our pets, pictures of our family. It's a great community of great people hanging out, talking about fights, pop culture, and the deepest things in life. So come hang out with us. John, you've come too.
I will make it. I will make it there to the Discord. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. That's going to wrap up the UFC 259 post show. Thank you for listening.